Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me on another episode here at Higher Fire Inspire. I am your podcast host, Lizanne Dsouza. I am the founder at Lizanne Careers. And just to give you a quick intro about what we do, we are a recruitment agency based out in Mumbai, in India, and we specialize in recruitment for brands, mostly marketing, fashion, lifestyle, e-commerce, some really cool brands, and you can check out our website if you want to know what else we do. We also have a really cool Instagram page, so please follow us there if you want to stay in touch with us and know what other fun things we do. Today I am recording something really interesting, something that I have recently been reading about so much. Everywhere I go, people have been talking about this, and for anyone who knows me professionally would probably know that I love talking about all the hard conversations. And today, what we're going to be talking about is something really controversial, but I want to shed light on both sides of this situation. So, and I know I'm just keeping it really mysterious. What we're going to be talking about today is moonlighting. Okay, and for all of you that don't know what it is, I obviously will be going into a little bit of detail. So, just to talk about what our topic for today is. So today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of moonlighting and how to make it work. So before I get into anything, I want to just quickly explain what moonlighting is. Moonlighting is a term used when an individual takes up extra work, mostly without informing their employer. And I think that is where the problem lies right now. Okay, it is the latter part of the definition of what moonlighting is. I think that is an issue. From what I've been reading, it looks like a lot of employers are quite offended or think it's quite unethical for a current employee to take up another job while they're still employed with them. So I want to take a step back and talk about my experience with moonlighting per se. I live in India now and I run this amazing business with a really, really good team. I've been doing this for a few years, but only just started to, get all the branding in place, get a big team together. It has been a beautiful journey, a tough one, but really, really good in terms of the learning. But before this, I had another life. Believe it or not. I used to live in New Zealand. Gorgeous, gorgeous country and such amazing people. I learned so much there. I did my bachelor's in business management when I was in New Zealand, and I have a major in human resources, and I also did a few industrial psychology papers. After I finished my degree, I remember there was a worldwide recession going on. There weren't a lot of jobs available in the market at that time. As a student that had just finished off my bachelor's degree, I came home, which is India, for a holiday, and I said, I'll start looking for jobs when I go back. When I went back, there weren't any jobs available. I was unemployed for 3 months at least while I was going to a lot of interviews, talking about what I've studied. I had an internship with GE Money, which was one of the really good companies to do an internship with, where I did some real HR work, some really substantial work over there. But nobody would give me an opportunity at that time. And at that time, I needed the money. I needed money to, pay my bills. I needed money to buy groceries, basic things that you do to live. And so I remember a friend of mine that said, there's this job, and all you have to do is get people who are on dial-up. Remember dial-up? Yeah, that weird sound. Yeah, that's what that's what dial-up was, and getting people onto a broadband connection. Yep, if there are any Gen Zs or listening to this, I don't know if you even know what dial-up was, but before this, we didn't really have broadband connections. We had dial-up. So my only job was to bring existing customers onto the broadband plans, and it was done over the call. So basically, a sort of sales role, call center, and that's what I did. That's what the job was. It was only for 3 hours in the evening. I started at around, I think, 6:30 and went on till 9:30 in the evening, because that's the time most people were available, at home. They would answer the phone. And I was so desperate for that job. I was so desperate for the money that I said, yeah, you know what, I'll do it. So I went to the interview, and it wasn't really hard to get in, because, as long as you could speak English and you were determined to have a job, you would sort of get the job. And then everything else was dependent on your performance. So I took up the job, and luckily I was really good at it. I'm a good salesperson, for people who know me. I love talking. I'm quite persuasive. And it was not hard to sell, when you're talking about getting a better internet connection overall. At that time, everybody wanted a faster internet connection, something that was hassle-free. So it wasn't a difficult job. But while I was doing that job, I've still given a few interviews before, and out of nowhere, I got a call for a role that was, like an HR related role. It was a job for an HR executive at a manufacturing firm, and I went in for the first round of interviews. I went in for the second one, and guess what? I got it. Yeah, it was really nice to have that job, and finally, after trying for 4 months or something like that, I got this job, and it made me feel really good about myself. But I had just taken up this other role, right? The part-time one that started in the evening. Now I was left with the whole dilemma of, should I continue to do my part-time job? Should I leave it and just take up the full-time job? I think a lot of you know the obvious thing would be to leave the part-time job that is not, aligning with your career goals, and take up the full-time job, which is the HR role. And that was my first thought. However, I felt really, really guilty to leave the part-time job because that was, somebody gave me an opportunity that the other person didn't. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do both of them together. Yes. And that is exactly what I did. So that is my experience with moonlighting. So this is coming from someone who's actually had 2 jobs at one time. And the way I did it is, the things that I want to go through today. If you're looking for that extra cash, or for whatever reason you feel like you can't get out of that situation, then today what I want to do is talk to you about how I went through it and what I think could be some of the ways that you could also. Okay, so like I said, moonlighting is a term used when an individual takes up extra work, mostly without informing their employer. And I think that is where the problem lies. A lot of employees feel that there's a breach of trust when they find out that their employee is working another job. Okay, so let's try and understand first of all, why do people take up another job? I obviously told you my story. And you're probably thinking, wow, that was so ethical of me, but it was tough on me. I made a decision to do something that I don't think I was prepared for, and I did it maybe for 6 months until I couldn't do it anymore. So you need to consider all of that as well. Some of the obvious reasons why people take up 2 jobs is, number one, they're not satisfied with their salary. The salary doesn't cover up any of their all of their expenses. Some of them are not satisfied with the work that they're doing. So they do one set of work, they do one set of tasks, but they're not fully satisfied, and they feel like this other job may be adding to that job satisfaction value that they may not be getting from their primary job. And the third thing is, maybe you're trying to, look for another skill compared to what you're getting at one job. So say you want to learn, web development, or you want to learn graphic design, and this other job is giving you that opportunity to do so. Then that kind of entices that idea of taking up that second job. So then let's quickly move to the pros of moonlighting, right? Of course, if so many people are doing it, there must be something to it. Of course, the obvious thing that comes through from having 2 jobs is the extra cash. So there is an opportunity to make that extra money on the side, and sometimes you can do like a cash job in some countries which is not taxed, and yeah, because it's only for a few hours, so it does become easier. Opportunity to learn new skills. A lot of people don't get that. Like I said, if you want to do web development, there's a whole new industry with the blockchain now come into play, where I think a lot of people feel like if they put in those extra hours after work, they could develop a new skill. There's always been people trading on the stock market, right? Besides their primary job, and they develop new skills in terms of investments. Also, another reason why, I mean, the pros of moonlighting, sorry, is to test a new career. Say that you want to move careers completely, but you're scared, to leave your current job and completely take that leap of faith. Not everyone, is that confident or willing to do that. So a good thing that could come from moonlighting is actually testing out a new career by doing a part-time job in a new industry, a different environment, and seeing how that goes for you before you completely switch. I would also say that there are some benefits to employers as well from moonlighting. If you have an employee who's doing something else on the side, there's a good chance that they could bring those skills to your workplace. Maybe if you don't have those skills, for example, if someone's learning graphic design, which you don't have the time for them to learn in your own team. Now they have that skill which you can use and utilize, which you could pay them more for as well, right? So it's not always a negative to that. Some of the cons of moonlighting, some of the negatives of it is, of course, you may be overworking. That was one of the reasons why I gave up my my second job, is because I was starting my first job at 8 in the morning, finishing it off at 5:30, and then starting my other job at 6:30 in the evening and finishing off that at 9:30. And mind you, I lived in New Zealand, which meant that I had to cook, clean, and take care of all of my other needs as well. But hey, I was 21, and that was another lifetime ago. So I did have that kind of strength, that kind of motivation, that kind of physical strength as well at that time to do two jobs. If you ask me now, it would be a difficult, the answer would be quite obvious whether I could do two jobs or no. No career directions. I feel like sometimes if you're doing a lot of things, then you don't have a specific career that you're going to follow, which may cause a little bit of a blurry image in terms of where you want to be. So please be careful of that. Not being able to focus on one goal, again, that could be an issue. If you're doing graphic designing, I'm sorry I keep saying graphic designing, but I can only think of something like that being done remotely. I'm sure there are other jobs you can do as well, but not being able to focus on one goal could become an issue. No time for personal goals or families. We all know how work gets in the way of our family life or our hobbies and other things that we do. So that could be one of the negatives of having two jobs or moonlighting. So now the main question: how do we make it work? Like I said, there could be several reasons why people choose to have two jobs, right? And I think before we judge the person or just condemn it as being unethical, we need to sort of see if there's a way around it where both parties can have a win-win situation, because that's always what we want to achieve, right? No matter what you do. So the first thing is, I think it's very important to understand why you're doing it. Why you're taking up two jobs. Like I gave you an example of my journey. When I started working, I had no choice. I wanted to be ethical and do the fair thing to the person that gave me my first job, but at the same time I didn't want to give up on my dream job. And so that was something that was very clear. The reason why I was going to do it was very clear in my head, because the decision that you make is quite obvious, right? I feel like I was doing the right thing. Check your employment contract. It's always important to check your employment contract, because you do not want to be in breach of your employment. So if you're taking up another job, make sure that your old contract doesn't have any clauses in them that doesn't allow you to take up another job. Check with your HR before taking up anything. So I think one of the best things that I did when I was going through this process, this decision-making situation of whether what should I do? I spoke to my immediate manager very, very honestly. I told them what the situation was, and they actually, in fact, they were quite shocked and taken aback, and they said, hey, you know what, if you want to leave, I completely understand. But they were so appreciative of the fact that I was not just leaving because that would put a lot of pressure on them to get someone new. But honesty, I think, is super important. Try and do something that's completely different from your current role, so there's no conflict of interest. I mean, I think this is an obvious one. You don't want to blur those lines between your two jobs. Be organized and make sure that you do not overcome it. I think, like I said, we all have this idea of us being these superheroes that can do everything, especially at a certain age. We're like, yeah, I can do this and I can do that and I can do that. But be honest with yourself. Make sure that you're organized and do not overcome it because you're going to let somebody down. And I think that is where all the problems start. Make sure that both employers are supportive. Just because one of them is supportive doesn't mean that the other one is going to be okay with the idea. So make sure you're having the conversation with both employers. I think that is super important. Okay, so I'm going to quickly summarize or end this with saying, I feel like right now moonlighting is become an option, or it is even possible because we have this whole work from home situation going on. If you're working from home, then you tend to find a lot more time in your day, because a lot of your time, if you're working from office, goes in also traveling. You're spending anywhere between an hour and a half, maybe even more, to get go back and forth to work. So if you're working from home, I think maybe this is something that you can look at. If you're working from office, then I would suggest maybe try and avoid it completely. I also feel like now companies are becoming a lot more, I'm going to say open, but aware of the fact that there are people looking at having two jobs for whatever reason. I think many of them didn't even know that people were having two jobs, and I think that, like I said right in the beginning, that's where all the issues started from. That transparency, that trust, that honesty hasn't come through. And whenever you're part of the team, I think that's what people want to see first. So I think companies now are also putting in clauses for exclusivity now to avoid this whole situation. So please make sure that you read your employment contract. Make sure that you're aware of the do's and don'ts, and what's ethical and not. As always, if you want to get in touch with us and you have any questions, you can email me. I'm available on LinkedIn, lots of places to get in touch with us. And yeah, I'm just going to wrap up this one really quickly. Please comment, let us know how you liked it. Share it with people who you think could actually gain from these podcasts. Again, thank you so much for joining me, guys. And I will catch up with you next time. Thank you.